So our topic for today, we're going to look at compliance in Business Central, and the focus is on batch manufacturing. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail in the next slide. So my name is George Delp. As I said, I'm a senior sales executive with Stone Ridge Software. I lead our batch manufacturing vertical sales efforts, and joining me today is Marcus Hogue, who is a pre-sales architect, my partner in crime, and he does all the demos for our batch manufacturing vertical. So with the software that you're going to see today, it's going to be based on Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, which by itself is a great discrete manufacturing solution, but we've augmented it with some extensions from a company called YAVEON. So YAVEON ProBatch turns Business Central into a full-blown batch and process manufacturing solution suitable for food, chemical, cosmetics, biotech, and pharmaceutical. And due to the regulatory aspects, which we are going to be looking at today, it's also good for medical device or med tech. So today's topic, we are going to be talking about how our software solution will help you be compliant with the FDA CFR 21 Part 11. Sometimes I joke, I say that's the electronic signatures requirement, but it also has a lot to do with data security, auditability. So we're going to look at all of that today. And this is especially applicable to pharmaceutical, medical device, and biotech companies. Now, in some of those other industries that I mentioned as well, don't tune out right away. These electronic signatures go a long ways to, achieving digital transformation, helping to eliminate paper. So we do actually implement this with a lot of our food and chemical clients too. So what we're going to look at today, we're going to start out with some basics. We're going to look at how the lot management and quality work in Business Central. And then from there, we will then get into the electronic signatures so you can document who are performing all of these inspections. And then if an inspection fails, lot goes on hold. So that's how it all ties together. We'll also look at how the item tracing works as well as the audit log so you can see who did what. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Marcus.
All right, I think you've got my screen, so I hope we're good to go there. All right, as George said, we're going to start with really looking at lot and thinking about and examining some additional functionality that YAVEON brings to the lot setup of the system. And I'm just going to go here to inventory summary screen, and I'm going to pull up just one particular item, or I want to just draw your attention to one item. So this smoked paprika here that we've got, this particular item, what we have is the ability to have a status on a lot. And what that allows us to do is really determine then the disposition of a particular lot. So with what we call posting rules, and I'm actually going to show you this a little bit, under posting rules, we've got the ability then to configure rules around certain functionality of the system. So let's take, for example, production consumption. And what we can do with, in this case, production consumption is we can set up rules that say the lot status cannot be blocked and the remaining shelf life has to be greater than or it can't be less than or equal to 6 months. So it has to be greater than 6 months of life. What we can do is we can set then rules around the lot statuses, but information about the lot, like expiration date as well, to determine can we use a particular lot. So the goal here is really control over how and when we can use a particular lot based on, again, status, expiration date, and that sort of thing. So in terms of areas of functionality that we can control, I'm actually just going to open this up so that you can see the larger list. Assembly, so that would be sort of kitting, so we can control the lot around kitting. Item availability, so this is a big deal if you're looking at quantity that's available for sale. So in sales order entry, item availability can be tweaked using this lot status. Picking, provisioning, and then replenishment. So do I want to, ship something to a customer within a certain time frame, or do I always want X amount of life left in it, et cetera? I can do that. Adjustments, production consumption, which we looked at before. Sales shipments, which is a little different than pick and provisioning, just really depends on how you're doing that process. And then transfers would be warehouse transfers. So controlling setting rules around when I can use a particular lot based again on that lot status. Okay, let's look at while we're here, we're going to look at the traceability as well. So I'm going to pull up some chipotle powder. We do have item tracing. And what this does is really looks at all of the transactions that are for a particular inventory item. So in this case, we'll just walk this through a little bit. This is our chipotle powder. And what we see is I've got a sales shipment that happened. I can then see the warehousing transactions behind that pick, the movement, which is actually the put away of the output of production. And I can then drill into, there's the bill of materials of the inventory items that I use. There's the pick, the put away, and actually back to the PO receipt of a raw material input. So all full traceability. In this case, I'm looking at, if we open this up, I'm looking at usage to origin, but I could also look at origin to usage. If you get a note from a vendor and you want to trace it, that direction, certainly can do that. But what this does, what it does though, is it shows me all of the transactions that have been associated with that particular lot number. So what are the lot numbers of all the consumption or the components that went into it? If these were sub-assemblies, that sort of thing, I'd have drilled that capability as well to those other assembly components. What I also want to show you though is the ability here to see who actually had contact with the particular item as well. So if you're looking at traceability from either a bin location standpoint or from maybe a certain individual touched a particular product, that sort of thing, you've got that data that's available as well. So full lot traceability and tracking around again, input, consumption, purchases, receipts, transfers, all that sort of stuff. All right. Sort of next step with that is actually our quality module. And I'm just going to pull up an inspection plan here just briefly to show you what this is about. So the inspection plan allows us to set inspections, and we've got the ability to inspect items through the purchasing cycle, the sales cycle. There's some miscellaneous inventory things through the production cycle, et cetera. So I can set up tests and inspections around a particular item. During this process is also another way in which I can change the status of a lot. So for example, on a PO receipt, I test the moisture content of a particular inventory item. It either passes or fails, or it falls within a control tolerance, for example, of moisture content. If it falls outside of that, I maybe block that item. I maybe quarantine the item, kind of do whatever you want with that. Or I could make it available and actually release the. So changing the lot status based on inspections there is the key to this. So that's how we set those up. We also have certificates of analysis that can be done. So as I'm performing inspections, if you need to record those feature values, so in this case, I've got, again, a recording of a moisture content. What you'll notice here is this is actually a record that's been saved. So each time I generate a certificate of analysis, a record has been created. So I've got auditability essentially around that certificate of analysis. Certificates can be created that are specific to the customer if I wanted to, or just generic, either way. But then I can create this certificate of analysis, and then I could print it or generate it, or do whatever I'd want with that in my process. The key here is this. Obviously, this is configurable based on do I want to show upper and lower tolerance values? Do I just want to show the output value and the target value? Do I only want to show the output value? All that's configurable based on the feature or the thing that I'm testing. And then of course we can, modify this to make it look however you'd want it to look, but control over fonts and graphics and that sort of thing for the certificate of analysis. We also have the ability to integrate some language changes there. So if you need to generate certificate analysis in German or Portuguese or French or whatever you want to do, you may be processing transaction in English like I am here, but I want to generate a different language. We could facilitate that in the process as well. All right, so that's the certificate of analysis. I want to talk a little bit about the audit log capability. So here I'm going to go into the compliance setup, and I'm going to go to the audit trail table setup. What this configuration allows us to do is to really determine what type of data do I want to audit? And this is really done at a table level. So in this case down here, item table 27 is actually the item table. I can then turn on logging for transactions that are being inserted into that table, modifications as well as deletions on that table. And the configuration options here are, do I want to record all fields, some fields, and then some fields and include the changes to them? So let's look at some fields, for example. What some fields allows me to do is to determine which columns do I actually want to log when they change. So there could be data points that you don't really care about. I don't know, statistics group, maybe that's a field that users can change it, doesn't really impact the item configuration. It's not really part of compliance at all. Fine. Statistics group, I don't want to track that. People can change it whenever they'd want. Inventory posting group, though, maybe that's something I do want to track. So if that inventory posting group changes at all, I want to make sure that I record who did it, when did they do it, what was the value before the change, what was the value after the change. The thing about this is if you look at how many columns there are in a given table, I think there's 146 in the on the item table. I may or may not want to store all that data. So if you think about all the data that potentially could be stored, if you've got fields that are changing on a regular basis, again, they're not affecting me from a compliance perspective. Maybe I've got somebody that's doing planning and they're changing planning parameters and reorder points and all that sort of stuff. I don't care about those types of fields from a compliance perspective. I don't need to track those. So I'm not storing that data. But what you do have the ability, again, is any table that you'd want to monitor. So these don't necessarily have to be just related, let's say, to inventory setup and that sort of thing. If I wanted to record and monitor AR setups and GL setups and that sort of thing, I can do that too. But typically when we talk about compliance, we're talking really around those inventory type things. But any table that you've got in the system, and that would include any custom tables that you might create. So if you do create or even new columns. So if you're creating new columns on existing tables, those can also then just be managed in the same way that you're doing the out of the box objects using this audit trail setup. Okay, so what do I actually get to see then? I'm going to pull up an inventory item here, and I want to actually show you how the audit works. So let's pull up my sweet paprika. And let's see, under history entries, buried a little bit here, audit trail entries. And what I want to show you is that I'm getting a log of date, time, user. This is just related to that particular item that I'm looking at. But then I can see the field, the type of change that was made. So insert, modification, or delete, old value, and then new value in the system. So the ability to look at and sort of manage this, review it, however you want this to work. There are out of the box the ability to navigate to these history locations on the inventory related objects. Although, as I showed you before, you've got the ability to log, let's say, changes in terms codes or something like that. You might have to add some additional lookups for those types of objects, but the ones that you're thinking about from a compliance perspective, those natively are created in Business Central automatically. So if you think about items and manufacturing specifications and all those places, direct links to that audit log history from wherever you want to see it from those tables. We've also created some reports, let's say in Power BI, that allow you to do that as well. A couple of, again, modifications that I've made is to create a Power BI report. Power BI reports can actually be put right on the fact box on the side as well. So instead of having to navigate over to history and look at it, I've done that for people. Again, just publish a Power BI report that filters based on the record that I'm on, and I can see that data as well. So depending on how you'd want to display that, where you want to display it, all that data is in the system. So it's certainly accessible in terms of how you want that to work. Okay, let's transition over to electronic signatures next. And what I want to show you, or actually just talk about here, is throughout the system, we have the ability to turn on electronic signatures. And I'm just going to show this for features to start with for our demo today, but it is on manufacturing specifications on the items throughout the system. But you'll see this box right here that says electronic signatures. And what this does is it's a rules-based system, much like we looked at with posting rules from a configuration perspective. So you can determine what types of data you want to incorporate with electronic signatures. And I'm kind of couching my terms here a little bit because I want to, a little bit, we'll talk about where those specific things are, but let's just show you how this works. So I have a feature here, arsenic. I've got measurements on it, etc. I'm going to change this, or I want to change this to a certified feature. And in the system, if it's a new, if it's it has a status of new, I can see it, but it's not going to actually be active in the system. In this case, the feature would have to be certified to be active. So if you think about a manufacturing specification, which is the definition of my BOM and my routing, I can have a lot of new ones. I could have a lot that are under development. I could have some that are closed. But the certified one is the one that's actually going to be used for production purposes. So this concept of a status and the status being certified is really pervasive throughout the system. So I'm going to change this to certified, which means I'm ready to go. And what you'll notice here is it says that an electronic signature is necessary. So I can't actually change that without an electronic signature. And the way that I initiate electronic signature is over here, and I can say, well, I want to actually request an electronic signature for the change. So I have reviewed the feature configuration, and it is ready for certification. Okay. All right. So I've done that. I've put a note in there, and I click OK. And what's going to happen now is this is actually going to, based on the configuration that I have of my feature, or actually of my approval process. So this is a different user. So this is, I forget, Craig. Craig McDonald is over here, and he's the one that actually has to sign off on this change. And so what happens is there's an email now that goes over to Craig, and it says an electronic signature exists for me to review and to sign. So I click on the link. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up into Business Central for me. And inside of Business Central here, it's going to show me what needs to be approved. So right here is my, so you can see a little bit. So it says right here, it's master data. It's a feature that I want to certify. The feature is arsenic. You can see that Marcus submitted it at 1:17 today, and there's a request. There's the note over there that I put in, so I could, show that to somebody, or they could review it. I do have the ability then to link back to the document itself. So if this is a manufacturing specification, you get the point. Whatever it is, I'm going to be able to go back, actually look at that setup configuration in the system. I can sign it or I can reject it from this point. So let's just sign this, say that this is good to go. I have an electronic signature password that I actually have to put in. There is configuration around the password itself. So password complexity, expiration date, all that sort of stuff. This is a different password than the user password. So I have a user to access the domain, to access Business Central. That's not this user. This is a password that's specific for compliance. I do have the ability to require documentation or not. So when I put that note in there, there's a flag that says, do I need to have some sort of note go with the electronic signature or not? I said, yes, you do. So I have to put something in here. The same thing here. Do I need to provide some documentation as the approver in this? Yes, I need to do that. So I have reviewed the configuration, and it looks ready for certification. All right, so I'm going to do that, and I'm actually going to sign that. So what that does is it's going to log then, obviously the documentation, but it's also going to log that I made that change and actually done that approval. So when we go in here, and I'm actually going to open this up again so that we can see this. So there's my arsenic, and it has now been approved, and it's been signed off by. So it's requested and it's been signed. And so now what I can do is I can actually certify that. And now you can see I can make the change so that it is now certified in a certified state. What you'll notice is if I try to now make a change again, so let's say I wanted to take that back to a new status, we're going to be back into the approval cycle again. So it says I need an electronic signature before I can make a change. And in this case, I've said any change to the feature requires an approval or a signature. So that's now the process that's been locked in for that particular item. I do want to just show you there's other places that this has become important. Manufacturing specifications is one of those. So if you're familiar with the configuration of an inventory item, I've got a BOM and a routing. Over here on the right, then I do have the ability to do electronic signatures for the configuration of the manufacturing specification. So do I allow changes? Do I not allow changes to those master records? I'm actually going to pull up the configuration settings for electronic signature rules. So here we go. All right, and I'm going to actually create a new one so that you get an idea of how this, what we can do. So under the action here, as I said, it's more than just setup. So, and it's more than just even the manufacturing components that are available to you. So a change to an audit trail, for example, I could have an electronic signature around that. Inventory transactions could actually require an approval process or an electronic signature. So if you think about inventory adjustments that I'm making, maybe it's a physical inventory journal and I want someone to review and actually sign off on a physical inventory journal, I can do that. Jobs, so even functionality that may be not related directly to the manufacturing process, but jobs, if you're familiar with that in inventory or in Business Central, we can add electronic signatures on the jobs journal post, which is kind of an interesting thought there. Lot modifications. So on that inventory summary page that I showed you at the beginning, if there's a reason to make a manual update to a status. So maybe there was a lot and it was marked as blocked for some reason, and that was an error. Maybe the inspection that I went through was wrong, or there was contaminated or something. We re-inspected and it's fine. There is a re-inspection process, but maybe I just want to manually update the status of the lot. I can do that, but you probably want to track who's doing it. So we can put electronic signatures around those lot modifications. The lot info modification would be something like expiration date. So if you wanted to, maybe it was keyed in wrong or something like that during the receipt, I want to make changes to it, we can put a signature around that. Here's the manufacturing section. So all of these things around the manufacturing specification, around the consumption journal, decanting is functionality around manufacturing that we can do. There's the master data feature certification, again, physical inventory we talked about. Purchasing, so interesting, like a return process. Maybe you want a review or an approval on a return of a purchase, you can do that. Here are all the quality assurance components. So creating an inspection order, certifying an inspection order, certifying an inspection plan. So the plan is what I want to do. The order is related to the specific transaction. So maybe I want a review and approve on the plan itself, but I don't care about the order. Maybe I want one on the order for some reason as well, but I can do that. Certify these certificates of analysis. I didn't show you this, but I could generate a certificate of analysis. I can also certify a certificate of analysis. So if you have a secondary review process prior to it being certified, you can go through that, but you can also put a signature on that if needed. Quality assurance, again, stability tests, finishing stability tests, we can do that. R&D items, we can do that. Sales, we can do those. Here's all the warehousing components. So we talked about like physical inventory, but we also have it just around the warehouse journal transactions if you want to put signatures around there. So more than just setup is really the key here. More than just setup, it can be transaction based if needed. And it's a rules based system. So if I look at my certification, pretty simple here. I didn't have any conditions on it, but what I did is I said if there's a feature change, do I want to require documentation? And it's pretty simple that I've just said, you know what, it's Chris McDonald or Craig McDonald that can approve this transaction. I could also do a group of users if I wanted to, and I can also do a sequence of users. So if you have a multi-step review process, I can have user 1, user 2, user 3 to do that approval process, review and approve process. If it's a group of users, I could just have the first available maybe. So, you know, George and I can both approve it, and whoever gets to it first, maybe we work different shifts or something like that, fine. Either of us can look at it, can review it and approve it. So some flexibility around the configuration, if you will, of who would be the signer. Conditions can be set up as well. So if it's only a certain type of item, or if it's only a certain type of manufacturing specification, I don't know what it might be. We have done some more, let's say, customer specific approvals too. So if it's a shipment, but if it's a shipment to a specific customer, maybe I want a electronic signature that says, you know, Marcus has actually reviewed the shipment prior to being released to the specific customer for some reason. So you can get more granular too if you wanted to with a combination of these conditions on the data itself. Again, if it's active or not active, so I get a bunch of them set up and then just not have them active if I didn't want them to be. So, all right, that's a quick overview of the compliance components that we have. Again, ProBatch with YAVEON. They do work with the quality modules, which is not, explicitly part of the compliance area, but just know that those couple together. They also couple together with the manufacturing components within YAVEON. So any questions, George? I don't see any, do you?
No, I don't see any, but that was
Okay.
such a great overview. I think you preemptively answered most people's questions, or at least that's what I'm going to suspect here.
Well, great. Well, I always love the demo. So if you've got follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'd be happy to, we set up another time one-on-one to answer any other questions that you might have as well.